तो आज आपका आखिरी सेशन है. So just to have a quick recap of what you guys have achieved over these past 5 sessions, if you guys have been attending them and doing the assignments, you went from not knowing how to code Flutter to building a basic mobile app, which learning, understanding how to use widgets, what widgets are, having a basic understanding of what the language of Dart entails, things like types and variables, etc., things like that, and separating widgets using buttons and stuff like that. It's so that sets the foundation for you being able to use your UI. Then the next stage was for you guys to add Firebase to your app and then connect it to a database and then access the things from the database. Of that, currently I've had about 7 to 9 submissions of people who are successfully able to do so. You're still not able to import the Firebase library. I would highly suggest you message one of the people who did import the Firebase library, because a lot of people encounter similar errors. I made a document for you guys so you can populate a document with the errors you get so that other people can actually solve them and help you solve them. But I don't think anyone used it at the moment. But the thing is, I actually get there are about 20 plus of you in this group, and so I usually get 20 plus different pings, not 20 plus, but 10 plus at least. So it's very difficult for me to give individual answers to all of you. So I told you of a few people in our class who have been pretty consistently doing things. Mudassir is one of them. So you can ping him, and I'm sure he'll be able to help you with these errors, because I answered a few queries, but it's very difficult for me to answer everyone individually. The most common reason for having problems with Firebase imports is one, आपकी packages file के अंदर जो आपने उसको डाला नहीं है, और दूसरा packages file के अंदर आपने डाला नहीं है, उसके बाद import किया है या नहीं. तीसरा, कुछ लोगों ने Firestore packages में डाल दिया था, but Firebase core नहीं डाला था. तो Firebase core भी डालना होता है और packages भी वो डालना होता है. Sorry, not packages, Firestore भी डालना होता है. So usually if you have any error and you search up the error exactly and you Google it, Stack Overflow, you will find a similar solution. मैं भी खुद यही करता हूँ. जब आप में से किसी के पास error आता है, I cannot solve the error myself because my machine is Mac. So Mac does not have the same errors I have as Windows. So I actually search up your error on Google, find the answer, and give it back to you. So obviously the point is that if you do the same thing on Stack Overflow, आपको भी solution मिल जाएगा. ऐसा नहीं है कि I know all the answers to all the errors. So it's one of the important skills you guys will have to learn over time, which is error finding. Because there were students who were able to do it, and I know you will run into problems, but try doing it yourself. If it still doesn't happen, I'll see if I can help after this class. ठीक है, तो पहली बात ये हो गई. Okay, so back to where you are, which is the where you want to see ourselves. So now what I want for you guys is कि आप लोग जब इस सेशन को ख़त्म करें, आप लोगों के पास इतनी एबिलिटी हो कि इंडिपेंडेंटली आप अपनी ऐप कुछ बेसिक सी ऐप बना सकें. ठीक है, अभी आपने एक ऐप बनाई थी, तो बनाई है for sure with very basic features, लेकिन you notice it was either a single page app or something like that. So what I'm actually going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you an app that I made, and it was basically a production level app, and उसके सारी चीज़ें आ जाएंगी, राइट, सारे फीचर्स वगैरह आ जाएंगे, और एवरीथिंग फ्रॉम स्टार्ट टू एंड आपकी रिपोजिटरी आ जाएगी, आपके मॉडल्स आ जाएंगे, आपकी एंटिटीज आ जाएंगी, और आपकी स्क्रीन्स आ जाएंगे, आपके विजेट्स आ जाएंगे. सो यू गाइस विल हैव अ क्लियर लुक एट व्हाट द स्ट्रक्चर इज लाइक. सो दैट्स वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट्स व्हाट आई एम गोना शो यू, एंड आई वांट यू गाइस, आई एम गोना शो यू दैट. और मैं एक प्रोजेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर की मैं आपको स्क्रीनशॉट भेज दूंगा, सो यू गाइस कैन स्टार्ट बिल्डिंग योर ऐप एंड टेक इंस्पिरेशन फ्रॉम द स्ट्रक्चर वी यूज्ड. It doesn't have to be the exact same, but you can take inspiration from it. And then by the end of today's class, I'm going to give you guys a project, which is actually make a functional app, right? अब आपकी मर्जी, आप कितनी बड़ी ऐप बनाएं. You can make a very small app, a very big app, but keep in mind, a lot of the job applications I've gone to or interviewed in, one of the very first things they ask you is, okay, what example app have you made, or web app, or if you're doing React web app, or if you're doing Flutter mobile app, what app have you made? तो वो पहली बात यही देखते हैं कि प्रैक्टिकल आपने कुछ बनाया या नहीं. अगर आपके पास कुछ बनाया हो, दे हैव अ वेरी वेरी हाई चांस ऑफ वांटिंग टू हायर यू, स्पेशली अगर आपने कोडिंग से की हो, उसकी फंक्शनैलिटी कुछ हो. एंड आपकी बहुत सारी एग्जाम्पल ऐप्स हो सकती हैं. यू कैन बिल्ड एन ई-कॉमर्स वेबसाइट विच इज़ वेरी बेसिक, very standard, but it's very, very functional. Every company needs it. Or you can build something which is something like Kareem, Uber, that's a lot more complex. But if you add a few of those features, it looks very, very presentable. You can build a library app, or you can build a hospital kind of app. You can build a car showroom. You can build a music library. All of these things, obviously these are pretty complex apps. They will not be done in a few days. Might take more than a week or so, but once you've added them, they will permanently stay in your resume. And these are the kind of things that are going to land you jobs immediately. If you go to a person, you apply to them, and you show them on your portfolio that I have made this mobile app independently, I can install it on your phone. that looks that's almost a sure shot way of getting into a company, right? If your coding practices are good, a good company. So you want to have some of these projects in your portfolio. And the reason I'm spending so much time illustrating this point is a lot of you will receive this project and do a very basic version of it. अब उससे मेरा कुछ नुकसान नहीं होगा, मैं तो अब आपको चेक करूंगा और बेसिक वर्जन मीट करेगी तो वो असाइनमेंट कंप्लीट मार्क कर दूंगा. बट आपका फायदा जब होगा अगर आप उस ऐप के अंदर टाइम और एनर्जी इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. अगर आप एक ऐसी ऐप बनाएंगे जो आप लिंक्डइन पे शेयर कर सकें और लोग बोलें वाह दिस इज अ पर्सन वी रियली वांट टू रिक्रूट, right? Because a lot of the recruitments I had were like this. I shared my app, वगैरह, etc. on my portfolio, GitHub, वगैरह पे people can see it. And then उसी through आपके job offers वगैरह आते हैं कि oh you've done this before, oh please do this for us. So that's that's what one of the things you guys are, I'm going to ask you guys to make a project. अब class के end की तरफ मैं ज़रा सी और explain करूँगा. For now, I want to cover a certain final set of features that you guys are going to explore, and then I'll show you guys the app that I made, how it works, so you guys can have a sense of what actually an app ends up becoming in the large scale. सही है? So let me just open this and let me just share my screen. Okay, if you guys can see my screen, please let me know so that उसके बाद जो मैं आपको इंडिविजुअल चीज़ें करके दिखाऊंगा. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. सही. तो जो है, so this is the VS Code की जो outline for what the app looks like. You can ignore the bottom of it; it's not very relevant. For those of you who are interested in things like this, git ignore basically means that whenever you want to have a project, you want to upload it to GitHub. What is GitHub? सारी जो companies होती हैं ना, the first thing they'll often ask you is what is your portfolio? Now, one way to put your portfolio is on LinkedIn, but most companies, especially professional ones, Meta, Google, वगैरह, they ask for your GitHub. GitHub क्या होता है? It's an online repository where all your code is pushed. Many of you might know this if you're in third year, and many of you might not. Make it a habit that everything you do, you use GitHub to do it, and you push it online. What does GitHub do? Just to give you an example, let me just open GitHub over here. This is my GitHub, right? On the left, you can see all the projects that I've made, right? Or if you go through these, you can find a lot of every individual one, right? So you can see there's quite a few. And for each of these projects, it's going to be contributions होती हैं. And contributions can people can see what code you've made. ठीक है, तो anytime a recruiter wants to see what you've done, he can just come to the GitHub and he can see, wow, this person has done this much code. I can see his individual code. You just click on it. You can actually see the individual things you've done, the codes you've written, the formatting you have. सबसे बड़ी एडवांटेज ये है. दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि if you host your code only on an offline version, which means कि आपकी वेब पे नहीं है, सिर्फ आपकी मशीन पे है, you can't use a different machine to access the code. A recruiter cannot use a different machine to access the code. You have to send the whole zip file to him, वो जो बहुत ख्वारी का काम है. और सबसे बेहतरीन बात, वर्जन कंट्रोल. आपके कोड की डिफरेंट ब्रांचेस can remain on, you can navigate with different branches, different versions. So misal ke taur pe, you can actually see the 53 commits hai, that means 53 times I coded something and I pushed it. Not necessarily me, maybe different people. But you can see what happened in each commit and you can go back to it. This is extremely useful when you're coding large projects because you make a mistake and you want to revert yourself. Now, if you don't have now you can't make a backup, obviously, you can't make a backup every 5 seconds. That's not possible. But GitHub actually does this for you. It constantly keeps making backups for each commit you do. So it's anytime आपको कोई project में मसला होगा, फौरन आपका GitHub के अंदर you can just go back to that point and it's going to be functional. सही है. Furthermore, if you're working with a team, you have 3 4 people. How do you integrate the things together? It's impossible. It's very very difficult to integrate things together. So GitHub does it seamlessly. What you do is you go to your main code. You have multiple branches. आपकी branch A होगी, branch B होगी, branch C होगी. And anytime you want someone to add code to a branch, what they do is they copy from an existing branch. So it's like taking the current template, they make their changes, and then they propose कि इन changes को आप update कर दो. सही है. So it's like a branch. You can actually see the whole branching structure over here कि ये branch है वगैरह वगैरह. इस master branch है. Master is your main branch. And then you have pull requests. So मिसाल के तौर पे if you want to make a change to a branch, you can see कि you make a pull request and then a person sees कि oh, they've got this pull request on master. इसका मतलब ये है कि they want this new change to be considered. For example, if I like there's this pull request over here, added coordinates and waypoints, right? And you can see, okay, there's a description of what happened. Coordinates and waypoints were added to this, fala, fala, fala. And then you can actually see all the files that were changed. So you understand how this keeps a working documentation of everything you did, and on a professional level, everyone uses GitHub. I'm sure आपने सुना होगा. This is just an introduction because ये आपकी बहुत जिंदगी में काम आएगा as a coder, right? And you can clearly see, अच्छा इस बंदे ने आपने ये changes किया है इस फाइल के अंदर, इस फाइल में ये changes किए हैं. तो ये हो गया था आपका GitHub. सही. I won't be giving a tutorial on how to use GitHub because that's going to be out of very long and I won't be able to cover the other things. आप लोगों के लिए भी वैसे क्लासेस काफ़ी tedious हो गई होंगी. So I don't want to tire you guys out. इसके बाद हम आते हैं पैकेजेस पे. अब पैकेजेस के अंदर मिसाल के तौर पे you can do a lot of very useful things with Flutter, but you don't have to make them yourself. तो मिसाल के तौर पे I was working in artificial reality library today, and we wanted to track an object. So it's very difficult to do. You have to have machine learning, you have to have object tracking, things like that. But with Flutter, Flutter has a very open source library of packages. Excuse me. It's called pub.dev. So you might want to remember this. It's called pub.dev. So pub.dev. Pub.dev. You can search for any package within this and you will find almost like anything. किसी भी चीज़ का आपने ढूंढना है. मिसाल के तौर पे आपको जो ना एक करीम टाइप ऐप बनानी है, तो आप you want something that's related to maps, right? So you search for maps, आपका आ गया geographic maps package. इसके अंदर Bing Maps, Google Maps आ गया, Map Launcher आ गया, Maps Launcher आ गया, Maps Toolkit आ गया, Map आ गया, Dart.json, Map Picker, all of these things. So the point is you don't have to code everything yourself. You use the libraries that other people have made and then you integrate them with your code. And then you have very, very powerful pieces of code. You can make things very, very fast. Right? That's one of the things that I want to tell you guys. So misal ke taur pe aapne map banana tha. What are you going to do? You're going to go to PubDev. Okay, you're thinking, I want to make a Kareem-like app. So you want to make a map, but you don't know how to make a map. So you go to PubDev and you think, has someone made a library for this that makes my job easier? Or package, this is called a package, by the way. You search for that thing. You can search map or you can search Google Map. So search Google Map. और जो है Google Map का एक पैकेज आ गया पूरा बना बनाया. You can see a lot of people have been using it. It's very popular. And let's say you want to install it. So installing it is really simple. You go to it. इसके ऊपर हर चीज़ लिखी होगी. Readme लिखा होगा, change log लिखा होगा कि how was it changed. Example लिखी होगी, an example app using this. You can literally copy paste the whole thing to see does it even work or not. And then installing. Installing is very simple. You just they've literally giving you this command. You just copy this command, go back to your VS Code terminal, paste it over there, and वो पूरा आपको ऐड कर देगा, right? Just press enter and it's automatically going to add these things. An alternate way is that you go to package.json, right? Package.json. pubspec.yaml, not package.json. Packages in React. Pubspec.yaml, and you go to your dependencies and you add it as a dependency, right? So you can just add it as a dependency. What is a dependency? A dependency is कि आपकी app जो है इन libraries पे depend करती है. Which means आपके ऐप में अपना कोड है and then दूसरी लाइब्रेरी से कोड है. तो जब भी कोई दूसरा बंदा यूज करेगा, he has to also import those other libraries because the code is dependent on them, right? So that's what your dependencies are. और each time you have आपकी dependencies इधर होती हैं, each time you update them, आपका pubspec update होता है वगैरह वगैरह. आप लोगों इन चीज़ों का थोड़ा बहुत आइडिया होगा. And then वो जो someone was asking about importing, तो importing के भी instructions इसके दिए होते हैं. तो अगर आप कभी भी मिसाल के तौर पे you're getting confused with Firebase, right? So you go back and you search up Firebase. अब Firebase के अंदर literally आपको जो पूरे basic instructions है ना Firebase core के, पूरे आपके पास आ जाएंगे. सो गेटिंग स्टार्टेड आ गया, आपका पूरा डॉक्यूमेंटेशन गाइड दे दिया, चेंज लॉग दे दिया, एग्जाम्पल दे दिया, बेसिक फायरबेस ऐप पूरी सेटअप करके लिटरली यू विल कॉपी पेस्ट दिस एंड इट विल वर्क. You can literally just copy paste the whole thing and it will work. Just literally just press this button, copy, and go back over here to your main and paste it. That's it. Install करने के लिए just copy the lines, Flutterpub add Firecode, run it in your terminal. Literally, that's how easy it is to do some of these things. Obviously, Firebase इसके बाद और complexities आती हैं. So this is kind of initial point, but it adds on to that. Someone had a question. Okay, what's the difference between dev dependencies and dependencies? Dev dependencies are things that are necessary for your end, like while you're developing, but not necessarily when the user is using it. And you might think, how is that possible? Everything that developer uses, the user uses. Well, not necessarily. For example, इसके अंदर एक dev dependency है, मैं तुम्हें दिखाता हूँ. एक dev dependency है. Yeah. So this is a dev dependency. I can't find it. आई थिंक फ्लटर लिंट्स. सो लिंटर. सो मिसाल के तौर पे आपका लिंटर होता है. अब लिंटर जो आपके ये डेव डिपेंडेंसी है, राइट? या लिंटर इज समथिंग, फॉर एग्जांपल व्हाइल यू डेवलपिंग द कोड, आपको कोड को लिंट करना है. दिस मीन्स कि आपका कोड जो है आपको रियल टाइम बता रहा है कि अच्छा ये चीज़ नहीं होनी चाहिए, ये चीज़ होनी चाहिए, बट इट्स ओनली फॉर अ कोडर, इट्स नॉट फॉर अ person who's using it. So when you launch the code, the production version does not have the developer dependencies because the code is already launched. Now you don't need to have that linter, or you don't need to have that specific library to help you code. So anything that is only necessary for the developer but not necessary for the consumer is put in dev dependencies. Something that is necessary for both the developer and the consumer is put in dependencies. Google Maps is necessary to be put in dependency because the person is actually going to be using the Google Maps. If you're using a utility to add an icon to Flutter, that utility can help you put the icon, but once it's put, you don't need to change it further, right? तो एक दफा लग गई तो लग गई. So it's something that's helping you code. उसको आप dev dependency में डालेंगे. You won't put it in dependencies. वो खामखार बंदे की file size बढ़ा देगा. So that's what the difference between dev dependency and dependencies. तो ये चीज़ है. एंड तो ये आपकी पबस्पेक डॉट जैमल की बात होगी, सही है. ओके. ये आपकी डिपेंडेंसीज की बात कर दी. ओके, सो आप लोगों ने कवर कर दिया कि पैकेजेस क्या होते हैं. सही है. अच्छा, let's talk a bit about how you navigate. So now I'm going to actually take you to the code, etc. Let's go to your main file. Why is it start? Okay. So आपके जो है ये आपका एक मेन फाइल आ गई, सही है. I know you guys are probably thinking it's a big file. What's going on here? So don't worry about that. I'll just going to briefly go through what these things are. We won't cover them in complexity, but I want to at least tell you guys what's going on. So there are a lot of things that we weren't able to cover in this course. So I'm going to be kind of giving just a short version of how they work. फिर आप लोगों को बाकी सब खुद फिगर आउट करना पड़ेगा क्योंकि हमारे पास टाइम बहुत लिमिटेड है. हमने अच्छा खासा कंटेंट कवर कर लिया, बट कीप इन माइंड वी स्टडीड फ्लटर इन अ होल सेमेस्टर, राइट? सो इट टुक आई डोंट नो व्हाट, इट्स अ 3 credit hour कोर्स जो भी है, और पूरा अच्छे खासे घंटे लगे थे, असाइनमेंट्स लगाए, फिर हमने सीखा था. तो आप लोग बहुत जल्दी सीख रहे हैं. सो ऑब्वियसली वी कांट कन्वे एवरीथिंग टू यू, बट हम बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट्स आपको बता सकते हैं. सही मिसाल के तौर पे एक चीज़ होती है, आप सोचेंगे कि अगर मेरे पास कोई एक स्क्रीन है, हाउ डू व्हेन आई क्लिक ऑन समथिंग, हाउ डू आई नेविगेट टू द नेक्स्ट स्क्रीन? ओके, हाउ डू आई नेविगेट टू द नेक्स्ट स्क्रीन? उसका एक बड़ा सिंपल सोल्यूशन है. यू यूज दिस थिंग कॉल्ड अ नेविगेटर. सो लेट मी जस्ट शो यू एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ नेविगेटर. So for example, this function called start time, and basically what this does is, if I could show you the app, I think emulator isn't running. Okay, for some reason the emulator is doing some problems when running. So I can show it on my phone, but उससे screen share पे show नहीं करेगा. तो actually I can run it on web, you know. Let's do that. Let me just do that. This is how you kind of run projects, by the way. In this, you can also do Flutter run directly. You can choose Chrome. It's going to launch on Chrome. Just give it a second. Any second now. अच्छा हो गया. I'll just talk about the point that I'm going to be making once this runs. It's a big app, so that's why it's taking some time to load. And basically, what's going to happen is that Navigator basically says that when an app, whenever you do something, how do you switch to the next page? This is how you do it. This function exactly. Navigator dot off context dot push material page route push builder वगैरह जो भी है. It's a pretty long function just to show you what the whole function is. Dot login till the yeah, that's basically it, till the red bracket. So I'm going to show you. This is the function. Okay, so it's navigator dot off. I'll just putting this because when लाल लाल हो जाता है तो यार memory खत्म होगी. खैर, I won't be able to show you. The thing is when you run meet and a lot of these things together, it runs out of memory, so you can't show it. तो खैर, so the point is कि आपका navigator ये करता है कि when your app starts and you want to change the screen, for example, you have screen 1, now you want to go to screen 2, आपने screen बना दिया, right? Screen किस तरह बनाते हैं आप मिसाल के तौर पे आप you did widget build context return material app, scaffold, right? So scaffold is usually the base for building a screen. Scaffolding का मतलब ये होता है कि building construction materials. ठीक है, आप scaffold डालते हैं, उसके बाद बाकी सारी चीज़ें डालते हैं. तो आपने scaffold डाल दिया, अब ये आपका एक स्क्रीन बन गया. ठीक है, मिसाल के तौर पे आपने एक और स्क्रीन बना दिया and you want to go to the next screen. So what you're going to do is you're going to make this function, and what that function is going to do is whenever that function is called, it's going to call navigator.off. And this is the context. So it's saying navigate to this new place. So first find the context of the given place. So it's navigator.off given context. So this is going to say, okay, I'm currently at screen 1. Then it's going to say dot push material page route builder context. And so this is just a syntax. It's a long syntax. You won't have to memorize the whole thing. You should just write navigator dot so off navigator, and you can write dot, it's going to be off. So it automatically आपको जो ना चीज़ें आपको भेजते रहते हैं normally sessions of context, right? Dot push route. So you see, it kind of made the whole thing for you. Sometimes you do it, it makes almost the whole thing for you. So you don't have to remember it. But this is how you change things from one page to another. So navigator dot off the given context dot push whatever new screen you want, right? So material page route is a class, and it basically takes whatever new thing you want. Which so I wanted to go to the login screen. So it said, okay, take the given context and now make the given context this new context, right? So it built something else based on. So, and what's going to do is basically it's going to go from the home screen to the login screen. So this is how you navigate in Flutter, right? The app we built had about 20 plus pages. So you have to use this a lot in your code. You have to use this in a lot of places. So navigated of lot of context dot push. And the reason you have push is because this is kind of like a stack. So it's kind of like a stack of books. So you add a new screen onto the previous screen. So you have screen 1, then you push onto that screen 2, and you push onto that screen whatever. What's the point of pushing things onto a stack? If you want to go to the previous screen, you just pop from the stack. So it's like take the topmost screen off and you're left with the screen behind it, right? So that's how Navigator works. And this is how you go to different screens in your Flutter code. You're going to be using this a lot. Then let's talk a bit about null safety. Okay, so Flutter is what we call, it has a sound null safety. Actually, Dart is a language that has sound null safety, and then Flutter adopted it. What does sound null safety mean? Basically, nulls, a lot of your code can run into null errors, right? So all code, like if you've written on JavaScript, Java, you've written Python, they can always run into null errors, or they'll say, okay, none type exists. If you use Python, it says none type exists, doesn't exist, or something like that. But every single language has different types of null errors, and they're probably the most frequently occurring errors you will ever have. The beauty of Dart in Flutter is that Dart, it is impossible to normally have null errors. इसके अंदर possible है ही नहीं. आप कुछ अगर डालेंगे ना जैसे नल हो सकता है, वो उसी वक्त आपको एरर दे देगा। फौरन आपको इट्स गोना से कि ये पॉसिबल ही नहीं है। इवन इफ यू डिक्लेयर समथिंग एंड यू हैवंट पुट द वैल्यू इन, इट्स गोइंग टू से व्हाई हैवंट यू डिक्लेयर्ड इट येट, राइट? सो मिसाल के तौर पे इफ यू हैव टोटल रिपीट काउंट, बहुत सारी चीज़ों को डिक्लेयर करते वक्त, if you have any variable, so let's say let's find a question mark, map wrapper dot dart, okay, or let's directions question mark, direction service equals to direction service, so location text field. Khair, I can't find a relevant example right now, but it's like if you were to create a variable over here and you didn't declare the variable properly, it's going to give you a null error, right? And the way it does that is there are certain ways you can declare things. You can either declare them as const, so you can say const variable is equal to 0. That basically means this is a constant variable, and once you've declared it, it won't be changed. So if you declare this as null, it won't let the code compile. It won't even actually let the code compile. If you want to declare it as something that can be null, you have to say const. You have to put the type of the variable too, right? So if you have const int, then var is equals to. Then you can say okay, it can be
सर
null.
स्क्रीन शो नहीं हो रही.
Screen show नहीं हो रही? Okay, thank you for letting me know. तो जो है ये होगी share it again. Okay. Okay. So what I was saying was कि जो है आपकी मिसाल के तौर पे जिस तरह आपके पास एक वेरिएबल है. Oh, how long were you guys able to see the navigator code? Because the navigator code उसको भी screen share हो रहा था या नहीं? Oh, sorry, you had some questions that I didn't answer. So first, could you guys tell me, okay, were you guys being able to see? Okay, you can see it in Navigator. That's perfect. Okay. How can we access patterns from one screen to another? That's a great question. That's a great question. Let me see. Okay, there are two ways to access parameters from one screen to the other. One way is कि मिसाल के तौर पे जब आप navigator dot off push कर रहे हैं, तो मिसाल के तौर पे आपके पास कुछ login होता है. Let's go to this page. अब मिसाल के तौर पे आप चाहते हैं कि कुछ इंट्रो स्क्रीन से जो मेरा प्रीवियस पेज था इसके अंदर कुछ पैरामीटर पास करने हैं. How would you do that? There are different screens. So let's suppose in this screen you had a variable called let's say int a is equals to 0, and you wanted to pass it into this login. Right? अब आप किस तरह पास करेंगे login को? It's pretty complex. You want the next page to come and for it to have the variable. What you're going to do is you're going to make the constructor for login. This is one of the ways to do it. कि आप login की constructor के अंदर डाल देंगे. इस तरह ये है ना const key is equals to this. You're going to say final a int a is equals to and then you won't put anything, and then you can put int a. Oh, required this dot a. So this is the syntax you have, and basically what this is gonna say is now if you go back here, it's going to require you to put something in login, right? So it won't let you compile if you don't properly put things in login. So it's going to say the named parameter a is required. You see, it's actually saying that you have to put that parameter. And when you put that parameter in, the beauty of it is it takes that parameter and it pushes that onto the new screen, और उसके अंदर नए स्क्रीन के पास ये पैरामीटर इधर आ गया, तो आपका जो a है वो इससे पास हो गया. So you can it's very interesting way of passing variables. आपके जो 0 आपने वैल्यू पास की थी, इसको मिसाल के तौर पे 5 है, तो अब इसके अंदर 5 आ जाएगा. आपने a पास किया तो उसके अंदर भी a आ गया. Understand? So ये है. This is how you pass parameters in. That's one way. Another way to do it is something called provider. So इसके अंदर इसके मसला क्या होता है? What happens if you want to pass something down several layers down? So you have one layer, फिर एक और layer, फिर एक और layer. फिर आप हर लेयर के अंदर क्या वेरिएबल क्रिएट करके पास करेंगे? हर लेयर के अंदर आपके पास 5 लेयर्स होंगी, तो आप 5 वेरिएबल्स बस क्रिएट कर रहे हैं इंफॉर्मेशन को ट्रांसमिट करने के लिए, राइट? तो उसका सोल्यूशन क्या होता है कि जो है, लेट मी अनडू दिस. उसका सोल्यूशन ये होता है कि क्या कह रहा था मैं? Yeah, so you use something called a provider, and what a provider does is instead of saying कि इसका variable मैं उसको directly pass in कर दूंगा, which is kind of like saying कि I have this one and let me pass it to you directly. So something in screen 1 is being passed to 2 directly. What you do is you don't do that. You say anything in screen 1 is going to be passed to a global store, and we call this global store a provider. I'm just saying, gonna say provider just to tell you guys what it's called. It's called a provider, right? And what this basically says is कि आपके जो सारे, सपोज करो आप मिसाल के तौर पे आपकी एक कार्ट थी और शॉपिंग कार्ट के अंदर डेटा बहुत जगह यूज हो रहा है, तो आप उसको बार बार थोड़ी पास करेंगे कि अच्छा इस शॉपिंग कार्ट से पास करो फिर दूसरी शॉपिंग कार्ट पे जाए, फिर आपने करीम की पेज बैक किया फिर इससे वापस पास कर दो कि पीछे चले जाए. You can't do that. That's pretty inefficient. So you create this global store which is just going to have some global variables, and these are variables that are not specific to any page. They're specific to the whole application. So every single screen should be able to access them. So what you're going to do is you're going to save that variable to the provider, and then you're going to access it. तो मिसाल के तौर पर आप ग्लोबल स्टोर में आ गया, अब ग्लोबल स्टोर में से आपको जिसको भी लेना है ना, now two can access it from the global store. And if you want to really see in this in action, let me just show you actually uh, which screen should I go to. The screen of let's say driver home, the provider. Yeah. So for example, this is a great example of context.read current user provider. तुम्हारी एप्लीकेशन के अंदर यूजर्स थे, बहुत सारे यूजर्स थे, ठीक है. अब मसला ये था कि जो जो यूजर्स हैं, आपके हर जगह यूजर्स यूज होते हैं, आपके साइन अप के अंदर भी यूज होते हैं, सेकंड पेज के भी, थर्ड पेज के भी होते हैं. सो व्हाट यू गोना पास देम थ्रू ईच पेज? नो. सो यू यूज दिस पैकेज का नाम है प्रोवाइडर. और इस पैकेज के लिए क्या करते हैं, आपने एक जगह सेव कर दिया, तो वो जगह जो करंट यूजर प्रोवाइडर, उसका नाम ही करंट यूजर प्रोवाइडर है, उसका सेव करने का फंक्शन अलग है. और फिर जब आपको रीड करना है, जस्ट कॉन्टेक्स्ट डॉट रीड. अब उसने ग्लोबल स्टोर से एक्सेस कर लिया, उसको मसला ही नहीं है, आप किसी और स्क्रीन पे जाए, यू वांट सर्च दिस अप, you will find other places where you also have this exact same function. You see, it's used in so many places. किसी भी जगह को एक्सेस करना है, आराम से एक्सेस कर सकते हैं. The same user from multiple different places, and you can see it's used in probably more than 10 places. So this is how the industry level of data transmission is done. You use something called the provider. एंड या, और प्रोवाइडर यूज़ करने की भी अपनी कहानी है, वो अच्छा खासा लंबा होता है. आपको प्रोवाइडर के अपने फाइल बनानी पड़ती है, बिकॉज प्रोवाइडर की चीज़ें सेव भी करनी होती है. तो मिसाल के तौर पे आपका होम प्रोवाइडर है, तो आप उसका सेव करने का फंक्शन होगा, जैसे सेंड रिक्वेस्ट जो प्रोवाइडर के सेव करता है, और उसकी गेट रिक्वेस्ट होती है, और ये इनिशियलाइजेशन होती है. सो इट्स लंबा चौड़ा चक्कर होता है. अच्छा खासा कॉम्प्लेक्स. वी वोंट बी एबल टू गो थ्रू दैट इन डिटेल्स, मे बी इन अ मोर एडवांस फ्लटर कोर्स. But for the moment, yeah, this is how you transfer variables from one place to another. So हमारे पास टाइम कितना बचा है? We have about 20 minutes. ठीक है, ये काम एक हो गया. इसके बाद let's come to हमने जो एक चीज कंप्लीट नहीं की थी, we didn't talk about from JSONs, right? So let's go to any model file, and as you can see, this is our models folder. So if you look at the project outline, you'll see it's pretty interesting. So there's a library. Okay, so there's a library. Everything of interest is actually in the library file. So anything outside the library file is kind of like, they're relevant, but they're not directly what you're coding in, right? Except for the test folder. Test folder के अंदर हमने code के test लिखते हैं. ठीक है. उस लाइब्रेरी फोल्डर के अंदर आपके पास बहुत सारी चीज़ें होंगी. अब देखो, कॉमन मैंने ऐसे ही बनाया हुआ है. कॉन्स्टेंट्स होते हैं जो आपकी चीज़ बार बार आप यूज़ कर रहे होते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पे अगर आप कलर्स यूज़ कर रहे हैं, तो आप ये नहीं करेंगे कि एक कलर हर जगह डिफरेंट फाइल के अंदर, अच्छा ये कलर डाल दिए 0xFF, और फिर दूसरी फाइल के अंदर डाला हुआ है. नो, you just make this a single constant, and then you can see that this constant is going to be used in so many different places. हर जगह आप इस constant को import करेंगे और use कर देंगे. At the same time, अगर कोई name है, मिसाल के तौर पे आपका कोई proper name है, या जब anything like URL है, आपको किसी URL को use करना है, why would you put that URL in every single file? You put it in a constants file, and then you use it everywhere. You understand? मिसाल के तौर पे हमने अब ये भी टाइम के साथ भी ये किया है कि अगर आपको डेट निकालनी है, तो आप, खैर दिस इज नॉट द, ये कांस्टेंट नहीं है, खैर दिस इज मोर ऑफ अ फंक्शन, तो दिस इज एक्चुअली नॉट सपोज्ड टू बी हियर. खैर, and then if you see, we've arranged your things. So the way you arrange things in Flutter is usually either one folder, you can call it global components, or you can call it widgets, and this is going to have all of your components that are going to be reused. So हमारी ऐप के केस के अंदर एक बुक राइट कार्ड कंपोनेंट था, ये कंपोनेंट था, ये फला फला कंपोनेंट था, लोकेशन टेक्स्ट फील्ड. You can see these individual components. It's a lot of code. It takes time to write, but the whole point of this is that it allows things to be reused. तो आपने एक दफा एक component बना दिया, and then you can see this component is going to be used in multiple places. Can you see it's being used in more than one places, and that's the whole point of having global components. Then you have these things called models. तो आपके सारे जो जेसन मॉडल्स होंगे, मिसाल के तौर पे हमारे डेटाबेस के जो चीज़ें थी, वी हैव द अप्रूव्ड पैसेंजर्स, कि कौन से पैसेंजर्स अप्रूव्ड हैं, देन जो द कोऑर्डिनेट्स, ठीक है, कोऑर्डिनेट्स आप भेज रहे हैं या रिसीव कर रहे हैं, ये द कस्टमर डेटा, मिसाल के तौर पे आपके पास कस्टमर है, कस्टमर को आप उस कस्टमर का नाम है, आईडी है, लास्ट नेम है, फर्स्ट नेम है, प्रोफाइल पिक्चर है, एवरीथिंग। या जो फेवरेट्स, तो मिसाल के तौर पे आपके पास ये फेवरेट है कि इस कस्टमर की ये फेवरेट लोकेशन है। पैसेंजर रिक्वेस्ट, किसी ने आपको रिक्वेस्ट भेजी है। द आइडिया ऑफ दिस वाज अ कार पुलिंग ऐप, आई एम जस्ट लेटिंग यू गाइस नो, don't steal the idea please, but so that's why you have passengers and you have customers, so you have passengers and you have riders, and like drivers, and you have rides. So it's pretty, it's a lot of stuff, but the whole point is that the model file, it has everything to do with the database. So it basically initialized all the data that's going to be in the database, convert the whole thing into an object, and as you can see, it gets pretty complex. So at the level we're doing right now, it's not that complex, but later on it starts getting complex. And just to understand what's going on, this is saying, okay, get the ID from the JSON API, जो API रिटर्न हुई थी, उसकी JSON वैल्यू में से ID निकालो और आपको ID मिल जाएगी, ठीक है। but when things are a bit more complicated, when you want coordinates, you can't get coordinates directly, because आपके JSON तो directly coordinates देगा ना, आप उससे क्या करेंगे, आप उससे actual coordinates का एक object बना देंगे, you understand। तो फला फला, और फिर आपके टू जेसन फंक्शन होगा, तो फ्रॉम जेसन फंक्शन हो गया, टू जेसन फंक्शन हो गया, सही है। तो ये आपके ग्लोबल कंपोनेंट्स हो गए, ठीक है। अब दिस इज सॉरी, ये आपके मॉडल्स हो गए, ठीक है। और फिर यू कैन डिवाइड थिंग्स विच आर वे यू वांट। Another very important thing is providers and repositories, right? So repositories तो आप लोगों ने दिखा दी थी कि repositories क्या होती हैं। कि repository is when you have इसके आप डेटा रिट्रीव किस तरह करते हैं। तो मिसाल के तौर पर ड्राइवर की रिपोजिटरी के अंदर क्रिएट राइट के अंदर क्रिएट राइट की अपनी पूरी रिपोजिटरी है, कि मिसाल के तौर पर मुझे राइट क्रिएट करने का स्क्रीन था, उसके लिए अपना डेटा, अपना टाइप ऑफ डेटा की जो है अपने वो फंक्शन वगैरह होंगे। खैर इसका पैटर्न आपके ऊपर डिपेंड करता है, बट द मेन आइडिया इज कि फॉर एवरी टाइप ऑफ डेटाबेस इंटरेक्शन, मिसाल के तौर पर अगर फूड की ऐप है, तो अगर आपके पास एक शॉपिंग कार्ट स्क्रीन होगा, तो यू विल हैव टू हैव अ रिपोजिटरी फाइल फॉर दैट शॉपिंग कार्ट फीचर, right? Because you want to make separate files for everything, so everything separated into distinct things. This is all for your organization, but the better you organize it, the cleaner the code is, the more usable it is. Imagine all of these files disorganized, it would be completely useless to have a look at the file structure, because आपको कुछ समझ ही नहीं आएगा, सही है। अच्छा, सो दैट्स व्हाट्स गोइंग ऑन। ये प्रोवाइडर वो है जो आप पूछ रहे थे ना कि हाउ डू यू ट्रांसफर डेटा। सो यू क्रिएट अ व्हीकल्स प्रोवाइडर, तो आपने कहा कि जो व्हीकल्स हैं उसको एक ग्लोबल स्टोर में डाल दो, और वो स्टोर इधर इनिशियलाइज हो गया, ऐड व्हीकल्स या फेच व्हीकल्स जो भी हो, और फिर आप हर जगह से उसको फेच कर सकते हो, राइट। सो ये आपके जो है, दिस इज योर प्रोजेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर, एंड आई रियली वांट टू शो यू गाइस, सो यू गाइस कैन अंडरस्टैंड। अब इसके अंदर लॉट ऑफ दीस थिंग्स आर नॉट नेसेसरली रेलेवेंट। जो चीज़ें आपको याद रखनी है, कॉन्स्टेंट्स, कॉन्स्टेंट्स का फोल्डर हर वक्त बनता है। कॉन्स्टेंट का तो फोल्डर हो गया तो फाइल बनेगा, कि आपकी सारी चीज़ें जो कॉन्स्टेंट होती हैं ऐप के अंदर, मिसाल के तौर पर हो सकता है कलर स्कीम आपकी कॉन्स्टेंट होगी, हो सकता है आपके एपीआई की यूआरएल्स आपके कॉन्स्टेंट हो गए, हो सकता है कि आपके जो कुछ लिंक्स वगैरह होती हैं वो कॉन्स्टेंट होंगी, जो भी है, बट यू प्लेस देम इन द कॉन्स्टेंट्स फाइल, ठीक है। आपका एक फोल्डर तो होगा पक्का पक्का आपके रीयूजेबल विजेट्स के लिए, ठीक है। यू कैन कॉल दैट ग्लोबल कंपोनेंट्स, यू कैन कॉल दैट विजेट्स, आपकी मर्जी है, बट द पॉइंट इज आपका एक फोल्डर तो होगा ही होगा जो ऐसी चीज़ों के लिए होगा, ठीक है। उसके ना आपके सारे विजेट्स आएंगे जो इंडिविजुअल होंगे, ठीक है। उसके बाद आपका आ गया होम पेज, सही है। सॉरी होम पेज, खैर सॉरी, होम पेज को आप इग्नोर कर दें, दिस इज योर चॉइस, इफ यू वांट टू बिल्ड अ होम पेज और नॉट, डू यू वांट सेपरेट और नॉट, यू कैन एक्चुअली नॉट इवन कीप दिस एट ऑल, completely up to you. And then that's the rest. And then models, so models, global components slash widgets, and constants are things that you're going to have in every single code. And an additional thing you will often have is screens. So you're going to have, so if you open a folder, it should look like models, constants, screens, and then global components. Global components kalo ya widgets kalo, those things are very very necessary, ठीक है। And then when you go into more detail, you're going to have providers and repositories, right? So just keep all of these things in mind. So yeah, ये आपका हो गया प्रोजेक्ट स्ट्रक्चर। इससे आई होप आप लोगों को बहुत हेल्प होगी, क्लैरिटी आएगी कि ओके व्हाट डज एन एंड प्रोडक्ट एक्चुअली लुक लाइक। So yeah, let me try running this again, because hopefully I hope कि रन हो जाए, ताकि आप लोगों को दिखा तो सकूं कि what the final product actually ends up looking like later. launching copy. some आई थिंक मेमोरी का मसला हो गया, बहुत सारा वो एक साथ मीट भी शेयर कर रहे हैं आप, इसलिए सो खैर, बैक टू द पॉइंट। तो ये आपकी ज़्यादा चीज़ें मैंने कवर कर दी हैं, राइट। ओ या दिस इज वन मोर थिंग विच इज़ दैट द फ्यूचर फंक्शन, राइट। फ्यूचर, आई गिव यू एन एग्जांपल। तो मिसाल के तौर पे दिस इज अ गुड एग्जांपल of the get route. Now what did the get route function do? The get route function said, okay, I'm going to get the routes from the database and then I'm going to show them to the user. मसला ये है कि आपकी डेटाबेस के अंदर जो राउट्स आएंगे वो तो कुछ मिली सेकंड्स के बाद आएंगे, सो मे 200 मिली सेकंड्स, 300 मिली सेकंड्स, इट्स यूजली लेस देन सेकंड। The point is you have to wait for those routes to come back and only then can you use them. So this is why you have this thing called future. So what you do is it's a type. This is basically saying wait for whatever I was going to have. If it was in future, it would have just been list coordinates. It would just have been a list of coordinates. But because you're going to wait for something that's going to return in a little while, you have to actually call it future and then parameterize it as list coordinates. So you're basically saying wait in the future for a list of coordinates. And so a lot of people who जिनको error आ रहा होगा कि आपका result आ नहीं रहा, वो इसलिए हो रहा होगा क्योंकि वो जो future नहीं कर रहे होंगे. You don't do future, what it does it labels the object instantly and doesn't wait for the response. और उसके बाद सेकंड चीज क्या होगी, आपने एक तो फ्यूचर कर दिया, देन यू कॉल द फंक्शन async. Async का मतलब क्या होता है कि you wait for the function to happen and only then do you do it. I think I talked about this before. It's async await, but this is very very important. आप लोगों को बहुत सारे मसले होंगे because you don't put async await, क्या करेगा कि उसको रिजल्ट तो आएगा नहीं, आप फॉरन, क्योंकि वो तो फॉरन चल रहा है, वो क्या करेगा उसी ऑब्जेक्ट को जो इमीडिएटली अवेलेबल है उसको कॉल कर देगा कि अच्छा ये सेव कर दो। अब इमीडिएटली आपके पास वो राउट्स आए नहीं है 0 मिली सेकंड्स के अंदर, सो इट्स गोना सेव व्हाटएवर इट हैज व्हिच इज नथिंग। तो आपकी वैल्यूज क्या होंगी, एम्प्टी वैल्यूज। आपको नल एरर नहीं देगा, लेकिन आपको एक और ऑब्जेक्ट बना के दे देगा जो जो आपके लिए यूजलेस होगा। आप जब अपनी ऐप रन करोगे तो आपको कुछ देखेगा नहीं, सही। So this is exactly what the whole point of async await is, right? Okay, you wait for things. And just to show you a place where this is actually used, um, so over here you can see कि इस जगह के मैंने ये गेट राउट का फंक्शन यूज किया है। अब चूंकि ये फंक्शन खुद एक async await फंक्शन था, इसको जब मैं कॉल करूंगा तो मुझे इसको कॉल भी async await के थ्रू करना पड़ेगा। आई कैन नॉट, इफ आई कॉल दिस फंक्शन डायरेक्टली like without an await, it's going to basically just do it and it won't give you a proper answer, right? वो बस करके फारग हो जाएगा। when you say await, वो क्या करता है, it waits for this function result, for this function's result to actually return, and once the result returns only then does it label it. तो आपको एक्चुअली दिखेगा एक सेकंड के एक लैग आएगा, फिर उस लैग के बाद जो है आपकी चीज अपडेट हो जाएगी। So this is just an actual project, just to show you guys the code can be a lot, right? It can be a lot of code. So yeah, it can be a lot of code, and as you can see, it can get pretty complex. So you want to have smaller files generally, but even this has so many dependencies. So imagine if you didn't have these dependencies, how big the code would have been. So coding is all about making things as small as you can by separating them into reusable chunks. So yeah, that's it. That's just the project that I wanted to show you guys. And one question regarding previous class. Suppose I have data of person model collection Adra from my app. How will I do it? I've made the from JSON function, but I don't understand how to use it. Okay, Vasit, it's a good question. I'm sorry I wasn't able to see that. I was explaining something else. But the answer to this question is basically कि अगर आप किसी के मिसाल के तौर पे किसी का डेटा लेना, I'll actually show you the entire flow. तो मिसाल के तौर पे हमें जो है ना एक सपोज कर कोऑर्डिनेट्स थे, क्या कहते हैं, राउट्स का अगर डेटा लेना था तो राउट्स का मॉडल दिख रहा है, कोऑर्डिनेट्स का, लेट्स गो कोऑर्डिनेट्स मॉडल। ओके, सो मिसाल के तौर पे मुझे एक राइड चाहिए, सो आई वांट अ राइड। व्हाट इज अ राइड? इस तरह करीम की एक राइड होती है, उसके क्या होता है, आपकी ड्राइवर की आईडी होती है, व्हीकल की आईडी होती है, स्टार्टिंग डेस्टिनेशन, एंडिंग डेस्टिनेशन, कोऑर्डिनेट्स, एंडिंग कोऑर्डिनेट्स जो भी हो, इट इज ऑल दीज थिंग्स। तो अब ये होता है कि अब अगर आपको टू जेसन तो आप समझ आ गया था, अब फ्रॉम जेसन के लिए आपको क्या करना पड़ेगा कि दिस इज एक्चुअली bit complex, and what you do is you call it, this is just syntax, but the point is कि आपको ये specify करना पड़ेगा कि the input is going to be a map of string dynamic, दैट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट मैप ऑफ स्ट्रिंग डायनामिक मैंने इसको पहले ही समझाया था बट व्हाट दिस मींस इज कि चूंकि आपके पास एपीआई कॉल आ रही है आप बेसिकली कह रहे हैं कि द इनपुट इज जस्ट गोइंग टू बी अ पेयर्स ऑफ स्ट्रिंग्स एंड वैल्यूज स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू पेयर्स तो मेरे केस के स्ट्रिंग वैल्यू पेयर क्या है आईडी मिसाल के वन ड्राइवर आईडी 54 व्हीकल आईडी 72 स्टार्टिंग डेस्टिनेशन Gulistan and Johor. Ending destination, maybe IBA. Starting coordinates, 54, 23. But the point is, can you see the string to something else mapping? So this is called a mapping, right? So that's why you call it a map of string to dynamic. And what you're going to return is you're going to return an object, right? अब ये आपकी मर्जी है क्या रिटर्न करें मेरे केस के मैं ऑब्जेक्ट रिटर्न करूंगा and you make it from the things that you use. So you can actually I can actually खैर इस कोड कॉपी पेस्ट करने का फायदा नहीं होगा क्योंकि काफी कॉम्प्लेक्स है लेकिन this is general idea of how you do it. And now notice कि जब आपने एक write object बनाया so now you created an object for write. So this is a constructor. What does a constructor take as arguments? All of these things. So now you're getting a write object which takes the ID, the driver ID, the vehicle ID, the starting destination, ending destination. और आप इसके क्या डालेंगे कि the ID is going to be taken from the API और API से वो वैल्यू उठा लेगा. So मिसाल के तौर पे so just to give you an idea of what an API result looks like, your API result might look like this is what it's going to look like. ID 1. Okay? And it's going to be like driver ID. It's going to be like 124. Right? And it's going to be vehicle ID. Right? And it's going to be 200. 200. Lots of things. So the problem is that the whole thing comes to you in the format of a JSON. Right? This is called a JSON format. अब मसला ये आपने जो from JSON किया आपको तो उसको इंटरप्रेट करना है okay, how do I receive this information? You can't just receive it as this general thing. It's not an object. So what you do is you take this information and you convert it into an object by saying, okay, go to the ID part and put that into my corresponding object's ID and create an object. क्योंकि ये तो आपके कोड के लेवल पे है ना ये तो आपकी API लेवल पे है तो आपने कोड लेवल पे उन APIs को लिया और उन APIs के थ्रू एक ऑब्जेक्ट बना दिया इससे आपका एक फ्रॉम JSON का पूरा एक ऑब्जेक्ट बन जाएगा and then you can use it. Where am I using it? I'll actually show you where I'm using it. तो मिसाल के तौर पे let's go to place where you use it, schedule rides. So you can see over here आपके पास a practical example of a from JSON function. आपने कहा है कि अगर if difference in hours is less than 24, which means if the ride is less than 24 hours, which means कि कल परसों के बाद नहीं है आज में ही है तो rides.add ride.fromJSON doc.data. सही अब ये जरा कॉम्प्लेक्स लग रहा है just to break it down, doc to data is basically your API parameters, your API answers. आपने API के answers को लिया और आपने कहा कि उनसे from JSON में डालो तो construct हो गया उससे आपने ride बना ली और फिर उस ride को आप जो भी करना है उस ride के साथ कर सकते हैं. So this is how you use the from JSON to display or read data. You understand? So this is how you use it. I hope that answered your question. And I'm sure कि इसकी recording भी होगी. इसको you'll have to look. I would recommend कि you go online and look into different examples of how different people use it. तो आपको एक idea हो जाएगा कि आप किस तरह use कर सकते हैं. ठीक है ये हो गया आपका. अब okay now तो आप लोगों का basically आपका final task ये है कि आप पूरा आपको Flutter के अंदर मैंने basic overview दिखा दिया. सोएब ने आपको फ्रंट एंड दिखा दिया मैंने आपको अच्छा खासा बैक एंड दिखा दिया आई होप आप लोगों को समझ आएगा कि एग्जैक्टली फ्लटर काम किस तरह करता है अब आपने ये करना होगा कि यू गाइस नाउ हैव टू बिल्ड एन असाइनमेंट और अ प्रोजेक्ट अब ये आपकी मर्जी है कि कौन सा प्रोजेक्ट बिल्ड करेंगे लेकिन द कैवियट इज द स्पेशलिटी ऑफ दिस इज द मोटिवेशन फॉर यू गाइस इज कि आपके जो प्रोजेक्ट्स बिल्ड होंगे ना उनमें से टॉप प्रोजेक्ट्स को हम एक्चुअली फीचर करेंगे वी विल एक्चुअली फीचर द टॉप प्रोजेक्ट्स दैट यू गाइस हैव सो यू गाइस आर इनिशियल बैच ऑफ अबाउट 70 kids up ending tak you have about 27 maybe 30 kids the people who are submitting their assignments are probably 7 8 but the point is that once you make an amazing project you're going to identify that wow this person put an effort the code looks amazing the app looks amazing you can get guidance from us you have an amazing end outcome we're going to actually publish it on the Google Developer Student Club page उससे क्या फायदा होगा first thing आपकी networking हो जाएगी a lot of recruiters will be able to see oh wow these students have built big apps you know it's really good for your visibility दूसरी वैसी कि you can see कि आपकी मोटिवेशन हो जाए कि मैंने ऐप बिल्ड की है I've won this competition kind of so it's kind of like a competition that you guys have and whoever builds the best app is going to get featured so try to build your best app and try to make it as creative as possible don't put too much of a burden on yourself मैं जानता हूँ आप लोगों के semester चल रहे हैं I know it's going to be difficult but the expected deadline for that app is probably going to be around reserve week we're going to let you know कि अच्छा खासा time होगा, it won't be like 1 to 2 days जितना previously होता था. लेकिन the point is कि if you want for you guys to put in as much effort, जितनी interesting apps होंगी ना उतना ही आप लोगों के लिए अच्छा लगेगा. And maybe you guys have a lot of winners. Maybe we can have 5 6 apps that we want to show. Okay, wow, this is a very interesting idea. It was made very beautifully. So that's your final assignment, and it's so and you guys have to incorporate backend. You guys have to incorporate front end. मैं आप लोगों को example codes दे दूंगा ताकि आप लोग देख सको कि okay, how do you do this? You can see things individually, and yeah, that's basically it. तो इनफैक्ट आई सेंड यू दिस प्रोजेक्ट ताकि आप लोग इसको एक नज़र देख सको. मैं इसकी फ़ाइल जो है आप लोगों को भेज दूंगा, और तो आप लोग इसको ज़रा देखना कि अच्छा ये प्रोजेक्ट काम किस तरह करता है. एंड या दैट्स बेसिकली इट. And I hope you guys had a great couple of sessions. I enjoyed teaching you guys. Um, I can clearly see a lot of you are putting into effort into this course. It's very difficult to manage all of these things with university. I know it's hard for me, so it must be way harder for you guys. आप लोग तो assignments भी कर रहे हो. So I wish you guys the best of luck. ठीक है मेरी तरफ से. It was wonderful having you guys in this course, and just put your maximum effort to make the as beautiful of an app you can. ऐसे नहीं करो कि अपनी नींदें कुर्बान कर दो, लेकिन याद रखो कि this is gonna get you good job. This is gonna get you value. Right? This is going to get you recognition, visibility, expertise, technicality, all of these things. So give it your best, and we're going to publish the best apps. We're going to show them. So we, in the ending, what we would want is we would want a working video of your app and then the code. So code ideally आप GitHub पे भेज दें, but you can also send us a zip file. But then you would want a working video. तो some video को जाके हम LinkedIn वगैरह पे अपलोड कर सकेंगे, socials, Facebook, Instagram जो भी होगा, तो आपकी बहुत visibility बढ़ेगी, right? तो किसी को अगर कोई सवाल हो तो प्लीज बता दें, because this meeting is about to end in 4 minutes. So there are no questions, I think. कोई सवाल है तो प्लीज़ बता दें, क्योंकि आई नो आप लोगों के सवाल होंगे, and inshallah we'll try to answer you. लेकिन there are a lot of questions that I get on DM from you guys, so if I can get in them in the project. What is the deadline for this assignment? The deadline will be after the after your reserve week. तो आपके मिड जब खत्म हो जाएंगे, आपके reserve week आ जाएगा, तो reserve week के probably end के around deadline होगी. So I would recommend you guys start working on it. जो previous 2 assignments हैं वो भी please कर लें ताकि आप लोगों को certificates हम दे सकें. We understand कि आप लोगों के जो है एग्जाम्स वगैरह चल रहे थे, लेकिन अब towards we've increased the deadline. कम से कम इतना तो कि आप लोग कुछ सबमिशन दे सकें ताकि we can see that you guys have learned. सही है? So yeah, hope that कोई किसी और का सवाल हो तो प्लीज़ बता दें. I repeat ताकि हर किसी की बेहतरी हो, because I know there are questions. किसी का कुछ confusion हो, कोई error हो जो.
सर ये जो हम रिपोजिटरी से हम डेटा गेट करते हैं फायरबेस के ज़रिए, वो मुझे अभी तक नहीं समझ आया. तो आप अगर ग्रुप में ऐसी कुछ भेज दें जिससे हमें हेल्प हो जाए सीखने में.
Sure. I'll do that. I'll make it a point to do that. कि आप कह रहे हैं कि रिपोजिटरीज के क्या मकसद है, ठीक है, मैं आपको बिल्कुल आप लिए ग्रुप पे इंशाल्लाह भेज दूंगा. इफ़ आई फॉरगेट प्लीज सेंड मी अ रिमाइंडर, बट आई विल सेंड समथिंग फॉर यू. आई सेंड सम आर्टिकल्स और सम वीडियोस ताकि आप लोगों को समझ आए. ठीक है, तो ये हो गया. तो ओके, सो आई होप दैट्स इट गाइस. मीटिंग भी ख़त्म होने वाली है और मेरी चार्जिंग भी. तो अनवर, आपके पास कोई सवाल है? Anwar Solangi. Someone's raised his hand. Anwar has. You don't have a question, I guess? Okay. I guess so. Khair, guys. Good luck. Wish you guys the best. और मेरी तरफ से खुदा हाफिज़ आप सबको.